Somebody asked today about, like basically his idea was, have you ever thought about using thermal pipes, heat pipes? And in some, CPU heat sinks, they do use copper, or they use copper-clad aluminum, or they use whatever shitty copper. Again, it's still, even if it's poor quality copper, it's still better than aluminum. It just, because of its density, it has more thermal mass. So like on a heat sink, when you apply heat to the backside, so all these fins are great. However, it takes time for the heat to go out to the fins and then to convect, right? Convection, right? The heat rises. It takes a while, and because you got to remember, amplifiers are, they're switched on and off in the megahertz. It's millions of cycles per second, and it's as if they're on all the time, when they're working, and for the most part they are. So you want to have a base. See how this one has a base plate of a nice just chunk. So because it's faster for the heat to travel through that chunk than it is to go directly to the fins and wait for like a cool breeze or even just natural convection where the heat gets hot, it's lighter, it rises, and then cold air comes in, cooler air, I should say. It's not cold air, it's cooler air comes in and does that. But somebody was asking about, have you ever thought about doing that to a subwoofer? And I'm like, well, there was a company that did that. So Alpine put a copper vane, and when I say vane, I'm talking about VANE. It's basically just like a plate of copper into the butthole of, let's see if Crutchfield has pictures of the back. And it was a sizable piece of copper, but again, if the incoming heat is being produced faster than the whatever mechanism you have for cooling can get rid of the heat, you're going to have a heat buildup. It's gonna be contained, and it starts leaking out to the steel. In the Type R, they actually integrated the frame into the gap so that the frame has very close proximity to the coil, which is where the heat is, the heat source. But you got to remember, again, take a step back. Do I really need all this? And is this just a gimmick to hype you up? And it is just a gimmick. So there are other companies, brands, designers, engineers that have been building subwoofers for decades that have not needed this device. Oh shit! I got some guy scooping poop back there in the garage or in the alley. Hang on, real quick. Yeah, some rando on a bicycle. I was back there killing flies and cleaning up I had trimmed the neighbor's bushes, and he come riding by. He's like, "Is there any bicycle parts?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "You need any yard work?" I'm like, "Absolutely." So for some reason, and I think it's just the culture in the neighborhood, is that they leave things out in the garage or in the alley for people to pick up, and I'm like, just throw it away. It's okay. Just throw it away. You don't need to save all those dog turds as fertilizer. You don't need to save the hominy, grits, corn, or whatever it is. And you don't need to save the chitlins and turn it into some sort of compost. Just throw it away. So, because I'm the only one that seems to be bothered by when I walk out of my front door, there's fucking flies everywhere. So, but back to this. Let's see if it shows the butthole view. Not really on that one. There was one earlier that I saw. Let me go back. So, there it is. Okay, so that's Crutchfield, Canada. See if we can get a bigger picture. Did you get him some water too, babe? So I contracted him for $20 an hour. It's like that's a pretty good square deal. It's like, I need $60. I'm like, okay, I don't care how much your drugs are. So anyways, you can see it there. That's the blade part of it. So, and it's just a thin blade. The problem, there's a couple problems with it. Number one, it's not isolated from the conductivity of the motor. That's one problem. The second problem, see, like, and I've talked about this before about, I don't know, stupid Jacob puts, I'm talking about Jacob Fuller, formerly of Sundown. As an engineer on the XV3 or XV2, he made the mistake, and I've said it's a mistake, and it's caused me lots of problems that it's a mistake, is they put like flux rings and shorting rings and all kinds of dumb shit in the gap when nothing belongs in there. So this is another example of it doesn't belong in there. Nothing belongs in there. And there's a couple of problems with this. Number one is like, and let me finish my thought on the flux rings. Number one, they're glued in place. Number two, hold on, John is calling me. So if you're going to put something in there for flux reasons, right, to quell the suspicious eddy currents that you think are limiting your coil or stopping your coil. First of all, that's not an issue. That's some marketing dumb bullshit. Second, you want to isolate the ring from the magnetic gap for a couple of reasons. Number one is you don't really want that thing getting hot and then detaching like they did in the XV2 from Sundown. The other thing is that if you bolt it to the thing, sometimes it'll cause problems. So, and we saw that in this application of the copper bar, and I don't know if it was just static, that was a buildup, like the plate was collecting electrons out of the air and creating a static buildup, which would then feed back to the actual amplifier. And so the problem is that we were playing these, and all of a sudden, like, the amp starts freaking out and cutting in and out and making weird noises and shit like that. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then I go, you know what? I bet you it's this thing. And so then what I did was I drilled and tapped a little hole on the side, put a little wire on it, and then took it outside the box and then grounded it. Problem resolved. So there was either some static or some sort of other feedback mechanism with the coil movement or the air moving that caused problems. So anytime you deal with, again, you don't need stuff in the gap. Now, if you have surface area, like if I don't know, we'll choose Sundown since I've already shit on Jacob's designs. So guys like that are really insecure, so they get really butthurt. They're like, oh, sundown.com is, I guess, for sale. Is it audio? No, sundownaudio.com is down. Let me go back. There it goes. Okay. So if you just go to their subwoofers, I just want to show you the back of a subwoofer. Maybe I should have used Google. This takes too long to load. Sorry, guys. We'll say XV3, because I think they changed the cooling on the back of it. There's a good picture. So what has been a trend lately is what's called venting the gap, where they do this little pattern around at the bottom of the gap, and then also the pole, of course. Now, there are some engineers that disagree with this method. There's been a couple of designs. Scott Atwell did one for when he worked at RE as the REMT, Mike Tango. There was no venting at all. There was no vented pole piece. There was no gap venting. It was just solid steel. And his theory was that what you're doing is you're forcing air to go across the coil by not having any venting. So that's what's called the Venturi effect, where you actually make this a little bit small. It's another variation of the same thing, where you make this a little undersized, and what happens is you get more SPL. You get a jet of air rather than just the air kind of moving. I think you get, even if this thing is huge, like Rockford used to do with the old speakers they did, with a big, like the pole was like 4 inches, and then like the inner diameter was like 3 inches. Even with that, I think it has more surface area, which helps, but the cost is tool time. So how much time do you want this piece of steel to be on the tool, on the CNC machine? And so that costs more money. So that adds cost to it as well. And so there's basically, it's not a break-even point, but a lot of this ends up being just marketing. You don't really need it, especially if you're using your woofers properly. They should not get hot. And so again, a lot of this stuff is really kind of unnecessary. You can also go the other direction, which is that you can put all kinds of things. I think I don't know if I showed you guys. They're not going to show the pole. Let me go back. Send down XV3. Pole top. I think it was the new builder was supercharging them, and they were putting Neo slugs on top of the pole, and they were showing slices. They had come in with a diamond saw and sliced the pole into fourths, which is, again, it's the same theory behind what JL did with all the pokey holes in the top of the pole. This is sort of the same idea to create more surface area. Again, a lot of that is just marketing. It adds a lot of tool time. I approached one factory, and I sent them a picture of the JL, and they were like, no, this is very expensive. They're like, this is going to cost you, like a lot to drill all these dumb holes. And I was like, okay, let's see what we can do to be smarter to get some cooling on there. And then I realized there's been several designs. Who else is like that? I think it was the MTX 8500. Some versions of the 7500. I don't think the 9500. I think the 9500 always had venting, but I can't remember now. Otherwise, if you didn't, now the 9500, the MTX 9500 motor is quite physically large, and it uses a 4-inch coil, and so that T-yoke can be quite heavy if you don't bore it out. And so then you have to think about how much is going to shipping be, right? And like these dumb woofers that don't have a removable top assembly, you end up with broken frames all the time in shipping, all kinds of problems putting something like that heavy and then shipping it through the UPS soccer team. So you're going to have that problem. And so then you have to ask yourself, do I want to do that as well? And again, Tilo Stompler of TC Sounds had figured this out, and he didn't create it. He just sort of made it popular in car audio about having a removable top assembly. PV, P-E-A-V-E-Y, PV has been doing that with their Black Widow subwoofer for, fucking 30, 40 years. Or it's not a subwoofer, it's just a woofer. But where it just bolts onto the back. So, and mostly that's for field, what's called field assembly or field servicing, meaning you can do it without having to send it into the factory or something like that. Which again is also, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of shipping, it's a waste of everything. It's like, if you're not making field replaceable assemblies, what are you doing? And then I saw a video that bugged me the other day. It was the new Kicker Solo XXSS or something, whatever. It's a stupid name. And it's an overpriced fucking woofer that they overrated. They rated their top one for like 4,000 watts. I'm like, not on a 3-inch coil. not on a 3-inch coil. And not with that big. Again, Kicker overrates their subs. I don't know how they're rating them like that. If they just put them in a small sealed box and then go, oh, well, it survived. Again, there are standards. Let me put that link in the description. There are standards for doing loudspeaker testing, but nobody really holds people to it. Like for a while there, they tried to do the it's not ISO 9000. There was like CEA 2005 standard or whatever. Again, you can't get everybody to agree on it because, again, the whole point of what they're doing here is to make money. They don't really care about following the rules. They don't really care about, like with JP, he sells you something and it's got a 7-day return policy, but it took 2 weeks to get to you. So once he has your money, it's gone. There's no takebacks. So again, if you guys keep falling for this and if you guys keep being dumb, I don't want to say you deserve that. There are people in the industry that feel that way, though, and typically those are bankers and people that are high value individuals, right? And they're like, you're stupid, and we're here to take advantage of you and teach you a lesson. In fact, then there's the whole other group of entrepreneurs that they're self-righteous. They take it upon themselves and say that their success is due to their faith in God or Jesus or whatever you want to say. It doesn't matter, because it's all bullshit. And so by ripping you off, they feel like they're doing you a favor because they're teaching you a lesson. So, and if you don't know about it, watch Braveheart. So again, the bankers won. The bankers always win. So the bankers control everything. And only when you do something like what they did in the French Revolution do you get results. And even then, France is having a buildup again of the aristocracy. And they, you guys are peasants and you're stupid. And when money is good. I remember right before the housing bubble broke, was anybody spending their money that they got out of their house, from a home equity loan, or even refinanced? Were they spending it on investments or, things to make you money, things to make you more secure? No, they were blowing it on this dumb shit and, razors and motorbikes and just boats and dumb shit. So again, you're going to keep going through this cycle and you're going to keep being taught a lesson as long as you keep performing that behavior. You cannot get these people to be responsible. You cannot get them to be even courteous. They will shit down your neck and they will say, you need to thank me for it. That's why there was a couple people that were kind of trolling me today on, of course, it was the audio legend Curtis Navarro, that I had made a post on Facebook about how my point, I didn't put any commentary on it, which was that you shouldn't really use bolts on the speaker box to go through the wood, because at some frequencies and some voltages, even MDF is conductive. And so you can get a short, you can get, burning, you can get all kinds of things. You really got to do it properly. And you should really make it like a heavy duty speaker terminal. Honestly, that's what Steve Mead has brought to the market. However, I don't think you should charge $100 for a speaker terminal, but he does. So, and you guys keep buying them. So who's dumber, him or you? But I want to get 1.21 gigawatts into my box. So anyways, but I hope that answers your question about why nobody uses heat pipes into subwoofers. Back in the 90s, Bazooka was the first one to patent the idea of liquid cooling a subwoofer motor, and the subwoofer motor was super tiny. And the problem is that the subwoofer, when abused, gets too hot for any sort of immediate relief of heat. To get rid of the heat, there's just no physical way to get, unless you're super cooling with CO2 or nitrogen, the coils and the motor and all this kind of stuff, and which is fine if that's what you want to do. If that's what I'm computing, that's fine. The one of the problems that you run into, though, is once you drop the temperature of the equipment below the dew point, and all these places where they do the contests are usually in like hillbilly country, some fucking shithole place that nobody with any kind of respect wants to go to, but you guys go, And it's out in the woods in some place in Ohio or Tennessee or some bullshit like that. And it's typically humid. And so your dew point is lower than you might want it to be. And so Florida too, it's the same bullshit. You want to go someplace dry if you're going to do any kind of liquid cooling or cryogenic type of cooling. And again, even if you're doing liquid cooling, like PPI, I think was the first one to do liquid cooling for car amplifiers. It's always been done for home or specialized equipment, like military applications or things like that for whatever you're doing. I got the guy at the door. But anyways, I love you guys. I'll talk to you later more. Tonight, tune into the live stream, 6 p.m. Arizona time. I'm doing an install right now, just a quick head unit. And so I got to go get that money. Love you. Bye.